Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 207. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and we're excited to have with us the acclaimed and celebrated New Hampshire artist and illustrator, Matthew Crafton. Matt.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good. It's good to be here.
So as of this recording, you are hanging out at our mutual connections house right now. Jesse Lundberg, who was on in one of our, I think episode 10 is when he came on. But you guys are together because tomorrow, as of this recording, is Granite Con.
Yes.
Which both of you are going to be tabling at tomorrow, huh?
Yeah, I'm very excited because that one was one of the ones it's been delayed for quite a while. And like I had the table already bought from like 2 years ago. So it's like I'm excited. I'm like, finally.
Right. And so so talk to us. Have you done conventions post-COVID so far, or is this the first one?
I've done a handful of them. They've been a smattering of them. And since it's gotten a bit more lax, the conventions themselves have been kind of getting back to being more chill too. Like the vibe has been really nice. Because people are just a bit more relaxed, but they still have restrictions. Like they're still making sure people are vaxxed and things like that. So right. It's safe but relaxed. It's like what I like to say.
How are things different, as you say, like in the convention scene as well? As it has rules and procedures changed at all?
Not too much. I mean, I guess the ones that I went to didn't have terribly strict. They didn't have someone at the door checking for vaccinations or anything like that. They just had like on all the promotional stuff said, masks recommended and like vaccinations required and things like that. But I'm not sure where they were checking that stuff. Like I guess for vendors, they just would ask us and we'd say, yeah, we're vaccinated, and they wouldn't check us. But I guess they might have been checking guests at the entrances. But again, I'm not sure. The rules didn't really change too much. I mean, when it came to how it felt, but there were definitely different signage and things like that.
Right. And so, how are you different from now as exhibiting? Are you doing the same thing, or have you been able to change up your setup and exhibiting at all?
Because for me, it really hasn't changed much at all. Being fully vaxxed myself, I usually don't worry too much about wearing a mask. But like if someone, if someone is hesitant to like come close, I ask them like, would you like me to put one on? That kind of stuff, because I want to be conscious of everyone else. Just because I'm vaxxed doesn't mean that they might be comfortable with me being unmasked. Right. Like that's really all I've really changed more about just how I approach people and how I talk to people is changed a little bit. The exhibiting my artwork itself, I just keep a display copy. Like there's one display copy of the comic that is dedicated. Right. And that's like one thing that I've done to sort of help out. And towards the beginning of the year, when things were a bit more tight, I had some hand sanitizer on the table, just to make sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And so talk to us a bit about how new things, as you mentioned, is like as a pre-pandemic now. What if somebody says, you know what, I haven't seen Matt Crafton's table, I'm excited to see his stuff at Granite Con. What can they expect that's different than they would have a couple of years ago that's at your table?
Yeah, I'm working with Googleplex Collectibles. They're based out of, I believe it's Connecticut. I've been working with them for about a year and a half now, and now it's seamless for me to create new prints. Like I can go right from my iPad into a Dropbox, and he will have them ready and to my door in 3 days. They are the most vibrant, most colorful prints I've ever seen, and they're all UV coated. And that's the newest thing that I have on my table is I have maybe 50 or so new paintings, 25 of which I've gotten printed. So I have like 25 new prints on the table that are in this like incredibly vibrant color and crispness that comes from this new printer that I've been working with. And like I've been working really hard on issue 2 of the comic, but it's not ready for GraniteCon. But later this year, I'll have that on the table as well.
Okay. Yeah, and what I love about your work too, Matt, is that you, unlike other artists that we talk to, that a lot of it is either something about superheroes or there's something about fantasy. You are full deep on illustration sci-fi. Like you, even some of the work that you have that might not be technically sci-fi has a sci-fi air to it. I mean, as an example, I think about the picture you have with your Chevy, the picture that you have of just like your the Chevy that you that you drew, that in itself also feels a bit sci-fi in the sense of just like the flowers that are growing around it almost kind of have this otherworldly look to it. So
Oh, yeah, I
talk
see.
talk to us about your inspiration and how you kind of started getting into illustration.
Oh man, if we want to go like down to basics, I think the way that light behaves
Mm,
was like my main like thing. Like I want what I really wanted to get good at was expressing the way that light behaves properly. So like and subsequently color, like color
mm,
with that. So like my thing has always been vibrant colors and really good lighting. Like I love creating really interesting lightscapes. I tend to drift really too far into silhouettes. Like I feel like I have silhouettes. Every other painting is a silhouette light scene. Um, just because I love the way that light will bend around an object. Um, but as far as other inspirations, I was actually really inspired by classic anime. Partly because of the way they did their backgrounds and how everything was such bright colors, and there'd be these really cheerful scenes of just like they always made everything look so pleasing, I guess is the best
mm.
way to put it. And I wanted to sort of emulate that lighting style and in the way that they did forests and towns. And I've mixed that sort of with the hard sci-fi. So I'll have these like very destructive looking scenes, but it's all bright colors and bright lighting.
And didn't you say also like in your that you were kind of inspired by the stars as well since you've been very young?
Oh yeah, yeah. There's walking outside when I was a kid at night to get to me and my brother had this clubhouse. It was like an old barn that we like converted into a clubhouse, and it was across the driveway. And we'd walk over there like 9 at night, and the stars would be out, and it was just mind blowing looking
Mm.
up because well, New Hampshire internet, but also New Hampshire night skies, like kind of a trade off.
And also, do you a lot of your inspirations then is like what about when it comes to like the your sci-fi images? Where do your inspirations come from this? Is this something straight from your imagination, or is there things that you might have read or seen that kind of inspired you to do your own take on?
um, that's really it's interesting because I grew up on like 80s war movies
Yeah.
and like Alien and Commando and a lot of these. And my dad was in the military, and I used to visit the military base. So much of my art started as a like a core starting of I used to draw like tanks and aircraft and soldiers and the weapons and and then eventually I started watching more and more like Star Wars and
Mm.
more Star Trek, and I was like, wait, space. So my work could probably be described as a mixture of Saving Private Ryan and Star Trek smashed together.
Huh.
Like, because I
So
want like the hard sci-fi, but I also really love um, that gritty, um, fiery, bloody, war stuff too.
right. And so talk to us about is all your work digital? You kind of said the word painting as well. Is this like do you mean like painting as in actual like canvas and paint, or you just paint as in like digital painting?
Oh, I do a bit of both. Like,
Okay.
I like to say that I really have something for everyone. Like I actually just did an art show up around where I live, and I did 12 different canvas paintings for that art show. Uh, the art show is called Intergalactic Wilds, so all of them were dedicated space paintings.
Wow.
And my focus was actually to remove the human element from them, so that when you're at the art show going through the paintings, you are the human element. So that's what I was trying to go for. But
Okay.
those were all canvases, and that was actually the first time I've done that many canvas pieces in a row. Because since I've gotten my iPad, I feel like I'm constantly doing digital work.
Okay.
But I do love working on canvas. I actually feel like the limitations of it forced me to be careful.
Hmm. Um, so you also mentioned, so what genre of medium do you usually see you get your most of your commissions from?
Oh, it's almost always sci-fi. Like it's
Okay.
usually
All right.
people will recognize the science fiction in my on my Instagram or on my website, and they'll be like, oh, I want a Star Destroyer, or I'm just now working on a piece that is of a Jedi, of a close friend of mine, that he wanted like himself as a Jedi, and I get to do that. That one's really fun. The last one I did was actually, I get some really fun ones. Like someone wanted this crystal creature guy, like in a cave filled with crystal trees, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. This is so fun to do. Um, and then one thing I've been getting a lot of is live streamers want overlays. They want custom overlays. They don't want to use the overlay um, tools that are online, because they don't want an overlay that looks like everyone else's.
Hmm.
And I built my own overlay for my live stream, and people are looking at that and they're like, "Oh, can you design this for me?" And I'm like, yeah, I can. What do you got?" And then they'll give me the pitch, and I'll give them an invoice, and now I'm doing full on overlays for live streamers too, which is something I didn't expect.
Wow. Okay. And would that be something? And would that be something that you do purely digitally then?
Yeah, it's just easier. I mean, if someone requested it to look more natural, like a natural paint style,
Hmm.
I of course could take the canvas paintings and then upload them to the computer to build the overlay that way. That would actually create a really interesting look. I don't know if anyone's done that yet.
Hmm. That'd be interesting. And so talk to us a bit about your actual design. So what do you use?
Oh,
As you mentioned, some paint, and then how about from the digital perspective? How do you do that?
the digital perspective, nowadays it's really not that much different
Okay.
from regular art, because now it's actually all right on the screen. You have
Okay.
a stylus that feels like a natural pencil in your hand, and I actually got a screen protector that feels like paper. And now my brain can't tell the difference really. The only difference
Wow.
is I can undo and I can edit layers separately. The example I like to give people is that I use traditional techniques on digital paintings because I like the traditional look, but I like the flexibility of digital. So when I'm painting, I like to limit myself to like maybe 10 layers, unless it's a really intricate piece, because that makes it so that you can like just really um, dig in and make it feel like it's like you could touch it almost.
Yeah, you got some. Like I said, there's so much atmosphere. Do you prefer doing landscapes, or do you prefer doing scenes, or do you prefer doing like characters?
I actually really miss doing characters. The last year or so, I really haven't had time to work on my comic, and I really do miss doing like characters, doing poses and expressions and designing, doing the character design. So I love doing characters, but I find myself doing so many spacescapes and landscapes this past year. Um, so like again, it's like one of those things where I love all of it. I love all the art, and it's hard to choose some days.
All right. Now, did it kind of help me on during through COVID, through the pandemic, of actually drawing outer space and otherworldly landscapes?
Oh, I actually have it as a hashtag on every one of my Instagram posts has this hashtag if I can fit it in. Sometimes I like to tell a story in my post so I don't have room for all the hashtags. But I like to say this is my church.
Mm,
It's like without art, I would be like I'd be
right.
completely too far gone, so to speak. So yeah, I'd say the artwork, being an artist during the pandemic was actually very freeing.
Mm,
It made me feel very there's a lot of support too. Like maybe a month after everything went down, I had people texting me like, "Hey, do you need money? Like I could use some art, and like I know people are hard on money now." And I was like, guys, this is amazing. Like, thank you so much for reaching out and getting commissions.
and where do you see most of your, as you mentioned, is that science fiction? Is it, do you do things for other artists, or do you do things for, like, say, like role playing games, or where do you see some of your commissions
I've
from?
had I got a commission of this was before I even got heavy into doing conventions for a game called Warhaven
Okay.
that unfortunately never got fully produced. They had a Kickstarter that was fully funded, and then they ended up having some issues with their, I want to say their back end. It's like
Mm,
all the people who were working together weren't necessarily working that well together or that efficiently, and eventually they had to scrap the project because of several things just happening. And all the artists got paid. It wasn't like a big scandal. It was just more of a an unfortunate thing. But I got the chance to design the human characters for the game and do I think it was 6 or 8 cards for the game
mm.
itself.
Oh
And
wow.
that was such a fun project to work on because I got to see other artists doing the other human cards using my design
Oh
for the
cool.
humans. And I was like, oh damn, they took that shoulder pad and they did this, or they took the visor and they added these things to it. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. That was a really fun project for that reason.
Mm.
But
And
yeah, I've done a couple of games, done a couple of I've worked on a couple comics that weren't my own. But yeah, sorry, you were about to say?
oh, I was going to ask you too to talk to us a bit about some of your projects here, the Pendulum, Void Server, and Wastelander.
Yeah. So Void Sever is the one that I have currently working. Like it's the one that I have. I'm up to issue 2 of it. I have an issue 0 and an issue 1.
Hmm.
And Void Sever is it's like an homage to Lewis Carroll. It
Okay.
is a science fiction retelling of Alice in Wonderland. But I use retelling loosely because the more I dug into it, the more I realized that it's way more complex than Lewis Carroll's story, and I'm gonna end up having to change a lot. But there's a lot there, like the cyberpunk wolf. Sorry, the steampunk wolf that you see there is sort of like my version of the Cheshire Cat,
Oh, cool.
and the whole sort of vibe of the comic is that you're basically going to be going mad right alongside the main characters. Like I don't want the reader to necessarily be able to know what's real and what's not.
Okay.
So far in issue 1, you're basically just getting an introduction to the characters, though.
Okay.
So like some of that sort of madness inducing stuff isn't right in the forefront, but there is like maybe 2 little snippets in there that you're like, what is happening? You know, which is like I love that kind of storytelling where you're you're not necessarily being mean to your readers, but you are kind of messing with them a little bit.
Right.
Mhm. So that's the
So
current
talk to us.
running project.
Okay. So how do you balance your commission and the paid gigs you do to your own personal passion projects?
What I normally have to do is if there's a spare moment in the day, that is going to be my passion project time. So like a lot of the commissions are on deadlines and I want to get them done on time and I want to make sure my reputation remains intact. So I work on those until they are finished in like my main art time that I have. And then any spare moment where, like, say I'm a passenger on a road trip, that's when I'm working on my comic. Or if I got 10 minutes before bed, that's also some passion project time.
Mm.
It's, I mean, I actually have pretty bad ADHD. I wouldn't say it's full chronic because I haven't had to medicate, but it does every now and then. It's like, maybe I'm not actually balancing any of this. Like maybe it's just happening like whenever it damn well wants to, kind of thing.
Right.
But I basically will like grasp for the time whenever I can.
Okay. And so Void Sever being your latest project. What about Pendulum? What's Pendulum?
Pendulum is my dream project. That is,
Okay.
if any project got picked up for a movie, that would be the one I would want to be picked up for a movie. So Pendulum is about a race of time traveling, science worshipping aliens fighting an unstoppable cyclical apocalypse. And it, I don't know. I don't want to take up too much time on one thing, but that is probably my biggest, most ambitious project. Like I want every panel of that comic to be a full digital painting.
Wow.
And like those are the pages that I have. Like that's how long it's been taking me to work on that project. Is
Wow.
I've had Pendulum in my head since 2008.
Did you kind of like have to make like an entire like a wiki almost for this, like the different races and the different planets and science and then all that stuff? Did you
Hmm.
already have that all planned out?
Oh yeah, I have whenever I get a flash of inspiration, I write it down, I put it in a notebook, or I do a quick little sketch. I have a binder dedicated to Pendulum. Like it's all just notes. And it is pretty extensive. It's getting to the point where sometimes I have too many ideas for it, and I don't know if they're even going to make it into the story. But I don't want to scrap anything until I go into the final production of it.
Mm,
That one, like, I guess it's safe to say it's a concept project
right.
because it's someday I will have a lot of time to dedicate to it, and I am excited for that day. But for now, it's kind of like a dream. But
Mm.
yeah, that one
And
is
so then, what's Wastelander?
Wastelander is the novel that I'm writing. That one is
Okay. All right.
um, kind of also a dream project because I planned so much for it. But that is let's see. I mean, the synopsis is right there on the website, but I'm trying to describe it properly. So that story has a lot to do with how humans treat each other and the human condition, and
Mm,
it follows a group of mercenaries that sort of uncover a plot to destabilize the main systems within not the solar system, but like a small sector of the galaxy, and they like go so far deep into it that they themselves don't know if they can trust their own organization.
mm.
So it's like almost like a cross between a war story and a crime drama,
Okay.
and
Okay.
then it centers around these characters that are almost like society's misfits that have supernatural abilities that sort of evolved over time. And it takes
Right.
place in 2238.
Right. I mean, so I'm really curious because a lot of this stuff is like you have yourself labeled as a freelance artist, but you also do a lot of writing. So do
Yeah.
you see yourself as an artist who writes or a writer who does artwork then?
At the moment, I'm an artist who writes because of the
Okay.
commissions. They're taking precedence, and the comic requires so much more art than writing. And
Mm,
then I'm working with a couple of other people on some other comic projects as well, which I'm doing mostly just the art for that. So yeah, I definitely would describe myself as an artist who does writing.
Now, I'm really curious about this other part. Are all three of these projects are they in the same like universe, or are they separate?
Void Sever could be in the same universe as Wastelander.
Okay.
Because Void Sever, the time period is kind of unknown. Um, in Void Sever, what basically happened to Earth is we got too big for our own britches and blew up the planet and
Mm.
had to leave. And the time that it takes to get from our planet to another one with the technology at the time, we're talking like 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 years. So at the beginning of Void Sever, I really just said I don't think I'm even going to talk about what time it is. So it very well could be in the same universe as Wastelander, because Wastelander takes place in theoretically our universe, like,
Okay.
but it's just advanced into the future.
Hmm. Now, so I noticed is like everything, all these things have in common is that sci-fi piece to it, science fiction
Hmm.
aspect to it. What is it about science fiction that draws you to be a part of that as compared to other genres?
Oh man, I'd have to say it's that it's almost like sci-fi is a perfect mirror
Hmm.
to just like turn on society and be like, almost like just to say, how do you feel, you know? So after reading this, after absorbing this, how do you feel? That's what I love about sci-fi, is that it's always done that to me, of like, oh, that's almost like, especially Star Trek does it more than anything else, I think, where it turns a mirror on society and says, do you see the problem here? And like when it comes to like the idea of finding beauty in the destruction, like that's a huge theme for me. I like to use sci-fi as a mirror for that, of like, okay, here are all these nasty things out there in the universe, and scientists are trying to get you to read their article by making it sound really scary. But in my artwork, I want you to see that, okay, a black hole destroying an entire solar system, that is pretty scary, but look how beautiful it can be as well. Like, just don't worry about it. It's not our solar system, you know. Like, it's someone else's. It's fine.
and and so with that, like looking for the beauty in in the destruction, and looking at beauty in that, holding up that mirror piece to it, um what are some themes in science fiction that you will always gravitate to, of whether it be about discovery or destruction or ingenuity or perseverance? What are some of those things that um you like to tell those types of stories?
Oh man, there's a sorry. Is it all right if I quote something from my comic? Is that too
No,
like,
this is your
all
show,
right?
man. No, you do
Yeah.
what you
So
need to.
I just keep thinking about this line that I put in issue 0 of the steampunk wolf character is narrating, and he goes, the tenacity of these apes. And it's that, really, that's the biggest thing in a lot of science fiction that I see, of like, humans are not very strong in comparison to the immense power that's out there in the universe. Like, if we wouldn't, like, we need so much special tools just to get to Mars, and Mars is right next door.
Yeah,
And to think that we would have that the audacity to just like, okay, let's just go. Let's just go there. And that's sort of the main theme in sci-fi that has always drawn me in, of like, humans will dare to go anywhere and do anything, and our own limitations are immense. Like, we have so many things that we're fragile beings, and yet we have such tenacity and determination in us. And I love all the sci-fi stories that show that. And I love the sci-fi stories the most that have aliens in it, that are like incredibly adaptable and strong, and like they have like skin as hard as stone and stuff like that. And they're looking at the humans like, how did you even get here? How did you get this far? And the prevailing theme is that we don't give up. We are
right,
persistent predators. Like, we just will never stop like trying.
right, yeah. And you don't, and that's a good point. But you would get some of those, as you say, that like science fiction almost as a genre represents entire species. Where if you think about, like, from, like, say, a fantasy novel, it's about individual heroes or something. So
Oh
it's
yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Mm.
And do you feel, and this is my other question, which I find interesting, is that you work mostly in like creating these sci-fi, some of your most beautiful artwork pieces, as we said, are some of your science fiction landscapes. Does it feel out of place to use almost like Luddite materials, like just like using actual paint and an actual canvas? Or does it feel more at home to do science fiction landscapes digitally?
Oh, that's a really good question. I love that. So I've run into this really interesting thing where using natural materials almost feels like almost like you're opening up a portal
Mm.
to to these worlds. Like when I started doing these paintings for this art show, I was so surprised by how so many of my techniques from the digital art actually do apply to the canvas, but I'm thinking from the back forward.
Mm.
So, for instance, there was one painting in particular that it ended up having like a purple, sort of a purple planet with some yellow clouds in the background, and it ended up looking more blues and purples. But without the layers of the planet's actually copper colored when I started, and I actually used a metallic paint to get that copper color. The copper and the purple, it's almost like you're falling into the atmosphere of the planet when you look at it. And I'm like, I don't know if I could have done that digitally. I don't know if I could have actually gotten that feeling of falling in with a digital painting. So to answer your question more accurately, sometimes I feel like it's actually better to do it on canvas because you can get something that feels like an actual natural phenomenon. Like if you're in space and you're looking at a copper colored planet, but the atmosphere is purple, you're going to be able to look through the atmosphere and sort of feel that depth and that thickness of it. And
Mm.
on a digital painting, sometimes you can't really get that feeling quite right. You can't get the layers of paint.
Right. So it's almost like when as you mentioned, it's like if you're painting natural landscapes in a sci-fi setting, it seems more genuine. But like, what
Yeah.
if you're painting like street signs or something like some sort of cyberpunk thing? Would it feel weird to do that with actual paint?
I think I think so, yeah, because there's some tools in digital that make cities and urban things incredibly dynamic and like really easy to just like swap things in and out and find what works. And I think you're onto something here because with a cityscape, it is all man-made, and anything in the digital painting that looks like it was, well, generated quickly and easily is going to look like just an urban thing. Like it's going to look man-made, which really does lend itself. I've had a handful of paintings like the you were just looking at one with the robot, the giant robot in the desert and the little base next to him. That one had a lot of those themes where the bridge I just quickly threw together. Like there's automatic rulers in some of these digital painting programs where you can just hold down a button and it gives you a straight line. And I was able to paint that bridge in like maybe 2 minutes. And
Mm.
then I was able to put a sort of a concrete texture right over it and use a feature to sort of it's almost like turns it into a flashlight and puts it right on the bridge and on nothing else
Okay.
in the scene. And that allowed me to do that, like basically build a bridge in less than maybe 10 minutes or so when I was doing that painting. Of course, I still had to do all the lighting on it, but the man-made aspect of it made it much faster to do in a digital piece. Whereas
Mm.
if I tried to do that on a canvas, every line is going to have a variable to it, and the line across the page is going to have a variable to it, and it's going to look a bit more jagged, maybe a little bit more like more brush strokes showing, or what have you. And if that's the style I'm going for, that would look fine. But I'm picking up what you're putting down. That it actually would lend itself much more to do urban scenes in a digital piece, just because of the tool set you have.
Mm. Yeah. And then on there, for those that want to check it out, go to spacevikingproductions.com. And on there, they'll be able to see all of all of Matt's artwork, all of his projects that we just talked about. You have a really good shop here. People can actually buy your comics. You can buy some of your extremely beautiful prints that you have on here. And also you also have like your about, and also if people are interested in learning, doing some commissions, you do have quotes on there, people that want to look at doing that. And these vary in prices depending on what they're asking for, correct?
Oh yeah, yeah. Like if you want just black and white sort of comic book style character, that'd be the cheapest option. And if you want to add like a background or add more characters, like it can go up in price. And then like full color, full detail painting is probably the highest one. But I did have someone that wanted me to do every single Power Ranger plus the robot in the scene, and that's where it says additional background and details and characters. That ended up being around probably a $600 commission because it was so much detail, and it took me like I think 2.5 months to complete the
Wow.
piece. Yeah.
Right. That's amazing. And yeah, so and also as you said, check out, you have a really active Instagram, and that's at Space Viking 42 if people are interested on that.
Yeah.
Also, you got a Twitter account as well, so
Yeah.
definitely check that out at Space Viking 42. So.
Yep. The Twitter is pretty full of crickets, but it's I'm trying to get into a better pattern of actually scheduling my posts so that they post to like every platform. But yeah, Twitter's probably my least active one. Instagram's my most active, and then anything related to like events is going to be on the Facebook page.
Okay. Yeah. And then also there, the Facebook page is at Space Viking Productions right there. So
yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, you know what though? I gotta say, it's before we went on the show, I was talking about when I started doing this a couple of years ago. I said, man, I got to get Matt on here. I got his artwork hanging behind me. I got to make sure I get Matt to come on the show. So I'm very excited that you that you made it. So yeah, thank you.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've wanted to get on for a while too.
Right, and come back on when you got. I'm really excited to learn more. I'm really excited to learn more about Pendulum. That sounds like it's going to be a pretty fun project.
That one goes really, really, really deep on the lore that I've created for it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thanks a lot for coming on, Matt, and come back on again.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. I recently started working with a new printer. You may even know him. It's a Google.
New Hampshire Internet. There it is, New Hampshire Internet. Okay, so I'll timestamp this. It'll be smooth. It'll be completely smooth later. So you said you're working with a new printer.